Hey everyone, my name is Ryan, and today I'm going to show you how to use RealityKit's new video materials. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. To follow along with this tutorial, what you'll need is Xcode 12 Beta, which was recently announced at WWDC 20, and an iPhone or iPad running iOS 14. Of course, your device should be AR enabled. We're going to select Augmented Reality app. We're going to give it a name, Video Mat Local. And the reason why I'm adding local to the name is because we're going to store our video file in our app bundle locally on the device. We're going to select RealityKit, Swift UI, and a language Swift. So just the defaults. Do next. Okay, great. So since we're working exclusively in AR and we're not going to do too much user interface stuff in this tutorial, I'm going to disable the canvas. To do so, you can go to editor and just disable the canvas. That way we have a little bit more space to work with. Okay, so this is obviously Xcode 12 Beta. When you create a new augmented reality app, you get some default code and a default RC project with a cube. We don't need any of that, so we're going to remove it. So we're going to remove this, and we are going to remove the experience.rc project as well, and we'll say move to trash. Okay, so now that we have deleted the default content, what we're going to create is an app that allows us to play a video on a TV, an AR TV, that is anchored against a wall or a vertical surface. And so this is going to be a fun app. It's going to be a pretty quick tutorial, and I hope you enjoy it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to import AV Foundation. The reason why we need this is because we're going to play a video which is going to make use of that framework. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a function called spawn TV, which will be in charge of creating the TV with very primitive objects and essentially putting it in our space. And so we're going to call a function in our make UI view right after we've declared our AR view. And we're going to say spawn TV. We're also going to pass in our AR view to the function. Now it's going to give an error because this is undefined. So let's define this function right now. We're going to create a func spawn TV. And in this case, we're going to say in AR view, which is of type AR view. Okay, great. So now we have our function, the error should go away. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to define our TV dimensions. Now, I used a 55-inch OLED TV as a sample for this project. I'm not going to mention a brand, doesn't really matter, but make sure that you just have something that is an aspect ratio of 16:9. And so we're going to say dimensions equals, and dimensions are 1.3 meters. Keep in mind RealityKit uses meters, so it's 1.23 meters wide. The thickness is 4 centimeters and 6 millimeters. And then the height of the TV is going to be 70 centimeters or 0.7 meters. So that's our dimensions. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create two parts to our TV. Our TV will have a housing entity and it will have a screen entity. The reason why we're separating the TV into two parts is because we're gonna do something fancy with the actual screen to play the video, and so that's why we wanted to have it separate. So let's first create so create TV housing. Okay, and so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create a TV mesh, or let's say a housing mesh, which is going to be a mesh resource dot generate box, and in this case we're going to enter in the dimensions of our TV. That's why we used okay, so now there's an error. This is considered an array. I made a slight mistake. What we have to do is we have to declare this as a SIMD3 with values of float. Now we should fix the error. Okay, so it's kind of confusing. So you can actually define a vector or a dimension XYZ using this method, but that's also an array if you don't properly declare it. And so make sure that you have simd3 with floats, so each of those values is a float as a dimension. That's very important. Okay, and so now we have our generate box, which is now not giving an error anymore. And now we're going to create a material for the housing, which is going to be the housing mat. And it's going to be a simple material where the color is black, the roughness is 0.4. So it's a little bit reflective, shiny, but it's not metallic. And then we're going to create a housing entity, which is a model entity, and we're going to select the mesh and materials constructor. For the mesh, we're going to do the housing mesh, and for the materials, we're going to do the housing material. It's just a single material in that array. Okay, so that is our TV housing. Next, we're going to create a TV screen. Now this screen is going to be a plane. So we're going to say create TV screen. Let screen mesh equals mesh resource. Generate plane width and depth. Okay, so there's two constructors for a plane, the width and the depth, and the width and the height. One of them is like that, and one of them is like that. Use the one with depth, and I'll show you how to actually put in these values. So we're going to do dimensions dot x for the width, and then dimensions dot z or z for the depth, and that should give us the same dimensions as the housing, but for a plane, so a 2D plane. Next, we're going to create a screen material, which is going to be also simple material, and we're going to use the same constructor. In this case, we're going to do white because we want to separate the actual screen and the housing so we can see that it's two different parts. Just for this tutorial, usually you would keep both black, but for this tutorial, we're going to actually separate them. We're going to make it a little bit more glossy, and we're going to say false for metallic. And then we're going to create our screen entity, which is a model entity with the same constructor that we used previously, and it's going to be a screen mesh and a screen material. Fantastic. Now we're going to add one more thing to the screen entity, and that is a name, because we're going to at some point search for this entity to play the video or to load and play the video, and so that's why I'm giving it a name. You can name anything you want. I'm going to say screen TV or TV screen. Let's make it TV screen. Okay, great. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are now going to add the screen to the housing. The housing is going to be the main entity that is the TV, and the screen is just going to be added to that on top of the actual housing. And so we're going to have to do some positioning to actually place this properly. So let's say now we're going to do add TV screen to housing. And in this case, it's very simple. We're going to do housing entity dot add child, and we're going to do TV screen screen entity. Got it. Okay, so now this is where the plane would actually be added in the middle of the TV. So you would see maybe glitching, but you wouldn't see the screen fully. And so what we have to do is we have to pull out the screen from the middle. So that's going to be half the depth of the TV and a little bit more. Otherwise, it starts to glitch the material. And so we're going to add 1 millimeter out of the TV just so it's on top of the housing and not inside of it. Because it will probably glitch if you don't do that. And so now we're going to say screen entity set position. The position is going to be, so we want to have it at the same X and Z or Z, but the Y we want to pull back out of. Yes, that's it. So we're going to do 0, 0, 0, and then in the y direction, what we're going to do is we're going to say dimensions dot y divided by 2 because it's in the middle, so we want to halve the depth. And then we're going to add a fudge factor of 1 millimeter or 0.001 meters to pull it out just a little bit. And then we want it relative to the housing entity because it's a child of this entity. Okay? So now that we have the screen, what we want to do is we want to create an anchor and add this anchor to our scene so that the TV can be placed on a vertical wall or a vertical surface, in this case a wall. And so we're going to say create anchor to place TV on wall. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say let anchor equals anchor entity, oops, with a plane that is vertical. Okay. We're not going to say that it's a wall because we can specify that it's a wall, but we're just going to say vertical for now. You can also specify the dimensions, the minimum dimensions needed to actually anchor it, but we're just going to keep it simple. And then we're going to add our housing entity to our anchor. So we're going to say anchor dot add child, and this is going to be our housing entity. Okay? And then finally, what we have to do is we have to actually add this anchor to our scene, which is a property of AR view. And so we're going to add the anchor. Okay, great. So this will spawn our TV on a vertical surface. So what we're going to work on next is using a tab gesture to load and play the video on our screen surface. So let's do that. For that, we're going to create an extension to our AR view. So we're going to say extension AR view. And in here, we're going to create a function called enable tab gesture. Okay. And in this tab gesture, we're going to create a tab gesture, which is a UI tab gesture recognizer. So we're going to create a tab gesture recognizer. And the target is the self, which is the AR view. And the action is, oh, not nil. It is selector. And we're going to call this function handle tab. We're going to pass in the recognizer. Okay, this is going to give an error because we haven't defined our handle tab selector function, but we're going to do that in a little bit. And next we're going to say, okay, we want to say self.add gesture recognizer, and we want to add this to our AR view. Now we are going to create our selector function, which is handle tab, and we're going to do a recognizer, which is a UI tab gesture recognizer. And what we're going to do in here is when the user taps on the screen, we want to check if the user is tapping on the screen of the virtual TV on the wall. Because when the user does that, we want to play the video, or we want to load it and then play it. And so that's why we're creating a tab gesture recognizer in the first place. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, let tab location equals recognizer location in self, because we want to do it in the AR view. So we want to get the location from the AR view. And now we have our tab location. And then the second thing we're going to do is we are going to get our entity from that with a method that's really clever. We're going to say self.entity at, in this case, we're going to say our tab location. Now, we want to make sure that this entity is of type model entity. So we're going to say essentially as optional. So we're going to create an optional. And then if it is actually model entity, it's going to assign this to the constant entity. And then we also want to make sure that the entity, and that's why we named our screen, we want to make sure that our entity.name equals TV screen. And that's why we gave it a name. So if these are true, then we essentially have our TV screen. So what we want to do now is we want to load video material, and and we want to load it for our entity. Now this is going to give an error because we haven't defined this function. That's what we're going to do right now. So we're going to create a function called load video material for, and in this case, we're going to do an entity, which is a model entity. Okay, so load video material for entity, which is of type model entity. Okay, so now we're going to make use of AV Foundation to load our video and play it on our AR surface. Now, I want to emphasize that the code that I'm going to write now is derived from sample code that I obtained from a video from WWDC20. I'll make sure to link the video in the description below. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an asset for our video. So we're going to say let asset equals AV asset with URL. And in this case, we're going to say bundle.main.url for resource. That's the one. The resource is going to be called demo video. Make sure that you change the string to whatever video name you have. And I'm going to use the extension MOV. Now this returns an optional. I know I'm going to add this video, so I'm going to force unwrap it. And before we move on, let's create a new folder that is called videos. And in this one, I'm going to add my demo video. So let me find it, add files. Okay, so I have a demo video demo video short. I'm gonna make sure that I name that properly. Make sure that your file is not too large, otherwise this is gonna cause issues. And so this is how we essentially import that asset from our bundle. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a player item. The player item is gonna be an AV player item. And we're gonna use our asset to create that. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to create a player and assign this to our video material, which is really cool what Apple announced this week. And so we're going to say, okay, let player equals AV player. And then we're going to say our entity dot model materials equals an array, because it expects an array. So we're going to create an array and we're going to say video material AV player. Okay, so we're creating a video material and then adding that in the array of the materials. And make sure to add it to the entity.model. Okay. And what we're going to do next is we are going to now set the player item on our player so that video can play. And so we're going to say player.replace current item with player item. And last but not least, we now have to play. Player.play. There are actually two more things that we have to do before we can test our app. First, we have to call our enable tab gesture function. And so we're going to say arview.enableTabGesture. This is needed so that when we tap on the screen, that the video is loaded and then also played. And then finally, we also have to generate collision shapes for our TV, otherwise the tab gesture will not work. And so we're going to generate it for our housing entity because this contains the TV screen as a child. And so we're going to say generate collision shapes, and recursive we're going to set to true. So now we are ready to test our video material app. We're going to give permission to access the camera and we're going to point it against the wall. There we go. The wall already has been detected. And here you can see our TV. So you can see that there's like a black housing and then the white screen. Now to play our video, what we're going to do is we're going to tap on the screen.
If you'd like to see more of my content, give this video a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss out.
And so we can tap on it again just to replay it.
If you'd like to see more of my content, give this video a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss out.
And so that's the demo. Now, this is really exciting to me because you were able to put images in AR, but never really videos in RealityKit for at least. And so now that RealityKit has video materials, it's very simple, as you saw, to display a video in AR. Now, if you have any questions about what I've shown here, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If you really enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss out on new content.